I'm reading another story by Haruki Murakami. It's called Carnaval. Of all the women I have known until now, she was the ugliest. But this might not be a fair way of putting it. I have known lots of women whose looks were uglier. I think I'm on safe ground, though, in saying that among the women I have been close with in my life, those who have put down roots in the soil of my memory, she was indeed the ugliest. I could use a euphemism, of course, and say least beautiful in place of ugly, which should be easier for readers, especially women readers, to accept. But I have decided to go with the more straightforward and somewhat brutal term instead here, for this captures more the essence of who she really was. I'm going to call her F. There are a couple of reasons it wouldn't be appropriate to reveal her real name. Incidentally, her real name has nothing to do with either F or with the star. Perhaps F star might read this story somewhere. She often told me she was only interested in works by living women writers. But it's not impossible that she might run across these words. And if she did, she would surely recognize herself here. Even if that happened, I seriously doubt that my saying of all the women I have known until now, she was the ugliest, would bother her much. For all I know, she might even find it amusing. She was more aware than anyone that her looks were far from appealing or ugly, as I put it, and even enjoyed using this to her advantage. I don't imagine there are many cases like this. First of all, there aren't that many ugly women who realize they are ugly, and those who do go on to take some pleasure in their ugliness are certainly a minuscule fraction. In that sense, I think she was unique, and it was that very uniqueness that drew people to her. Like a magnet attracts all sorts of metal to itself, some useful, some worthless. Talking about ugliness also means talking about beauty. I know a few beautiful women, the kind that anyone would find lovely and charming. But to me, those beautiful women, the majority of them, at least, never seem able to truly, unconditionally, derive pleasure in being gorgeous. Kind of strange, I think. Women who are born beautiful are always the center of a man's attention. Other women are jealous of them, and they get cuddled no end. People give them expensive presents, and they have their pick of a man. So why don't they seem happier? Why do they sometimes even seem depressed? What I have observed is that most of the beautiful women I know are dissatisfied and irritated by tiny, inconsequential flaws, the kind inevitable found somewhere in any person's physical makeup. They obsess over these little details. Their back toes are too big, and their nails are weirdly off-center, or their nipples aren't the same size. One gorgeous woman I know is convinced that her earlobes are too long and always wear her hair long to hide them. I couldn't care less about the length of someone's earlobes. She showed me hers once, and this struck me as perfectly novel. Maybe, though, all this stuff about earlobes was just a substitute, a way of expressing something else. Compared to this woman, isn't a woman who is not beautiful, who is even considered to be ugly, and yet enjoys that fact, a far happier person? No matter how beautiful a woman might be, she always has imperfections. And likewise, no matter how ugly a woman might be, there's always a part of her that is beautiful. And they seem to freely reveal in that part of themselves. Unlike a beautiful woman, is not a substitute for anything or a metaphor. This might sound like a banal opinion, but the world can turn upside down depending on the way we look at it. The way a ray of sunshine falls on something can change shadow to light or light to shadow. A positive becomes a negative a positive. I don't know if this is an essential part of the way the world works or simply an optical illusion, but it is in that way that F-star was sort of a trickster with light. A friend of mine first introduced me to her. I was just past 50 then, and she was about 10 years younger. But for her, age didn't matter. Her looks surpassed any other personal factors. Age, height, the shape and the size of one's breasts, let alone the shape of big toenails or the length of one's earlobes, all took a backseat to her spectacular lack of beauty. I was at a concert in Century Hall when I ran across a male friend of mine having a glass of wine with F-star during intermission. One of Mahler's symphonies was on the program that evening. I forgot which one. The first half of the program featured Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet, and my friend introduced me to F-star, and the three of us had some wine and talked about Prokofiev's music. All of us had come along to the concert, and my friend just happened to run across her there too. People who go to concerts by themselves always share a sense of solidarity, albeit a small one. Naturally, when I met F-star, my first thought was that this was only a singularly ugly woman. She was so friendly and straightforward, though, that I was embarrassed by my initial reaction. I'm not sure how to put it exactly, but as we chatted, I grew accustomed to her looks. They no longer seemed to matter. She was a pleasant person and a good talker, able to converse widely. Add to this a quick mind and good taste in music. When the buzzer sounded ending the intermission, and then when we said goodbye, I thought if only she were good-looking, or at least if her look were a little better, she would be a very appealing woman. But later on, I learned the hard way how shallow and superficial my thinking had been. It was precisely because of her unusual looks that she was able to effectively engage her powerful personality. Her power to draw people in, you might put it. What I mean is, it was precisely the gap between her physical appearance and her refinement that created her own special brand of dynamism. And she was fully aware of that power and was able to use it as needed. It's next to impossible for me to describe exactly what it was about her looks that was so unappealing. No matter how I try to describe her, I will never be able to convey to the reader the idiosyncrasies of her appearance. One thing I can say for sure, though, is this. You wouldn't be able to pinpoint any functional imperfections. So it wasn't like this part's weird or fix this part and she would look a bit better. Yet combine them all and you would up with a organically comprehensive ugliness. It's an odd comparison, but the process reminds me of the birth of Venus. And it's impossible for words or logic to explain that composite. Even supposing I could, it wouldn't mean much anyway. What we have there is a choice between two alternatives, only two. We either wholly accept it unconditionally as something that is what it is, or we completely reject it, like a take no prisoners type of war. In the opening of Anna Karenina, Tolstoy wrote, "Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." And I think the same applies to women's faces in terms of beauty and ugliness. I believe, and please take this for what it is, just my personal view, that a beautiful woman can be summed up by simply being beautiful. Each one of them is carrying around a single beautiful golden-haired monkey on her back. There might be slight difference in the luster and the shade of their fur, but the brilliance they share makes them all seem one and the same. In contrast, ugly women each carry around their own individual version of a shaggy monkey. There are small but significant differences in their monkeys. How worn their fur is, where their fur has thinned out, how dirty they are. There's no brilliance at all. So unlike the golden-haired monkeys, our eyes are not dazzled by them. The monkey that F Star carried around on her back had a variety of expressions, and its fur, though never sparkling or shining, was a composite of several colors simultaneously. One's impression of that monkey changed drastically depending on the angle you viewed it from, as well as by the weather, the wind, direction, the time of day. To put it another way, the ugliness of her features was the result of a unique force that compressed unattractive elements of all shapes and sizes and assembled them together in one place. And her monkey had quietly settled down, very comfortably and unhesitantly on her back, as if every possible cause and effect had embraced at the very center of the world. I was aware of all this to some extent. The second time I met F Star, though certainly still unable to articulate it, I knew it would take some time to understand her ugliness, and doing so would require intuition, philosophy, morality, and a bit of a real-life experience. And that spending time with her would, at a certain point, lead to a sort of a feeling of pride. It was a pride at the fact that we had somehow managed to grab hold of the requisite intuition, philosophy, morality, and life experience. The second time I saw her was also at a concert hall, a smaller venue than Century Hall. It was a concert by a French female violinist. As I recall, she played sonatas by Franck and Debussy. She was an amazing musician, and these pieces were part of her favorite repertoire. But on that particular day, she wasn't at her best. The two pieces by Chrysler she played for an encore, though, were quite charming. I was outside the concert hall, waiting for a taxi, when she caught me from behind. F-Star was with a woman friend then, a small, slim, beautiful friend. F-Star herself was rather tall, just a bit shorter than I am. I know a nice place just down the street, she said. Would you care to go have a glass of wine or something? Sounds good, I told her. The night was still young, and I was feeling some lingering frustration over the concert. I felt like having a glass or two of wine and talking with someone about fine music. The three of us settled down in a small bistro in a nearby side street, ordered wine and some snacks. But her lovely friend soon got up to take a phone call. A family member had called telling her that her cat was sick, so then it was just F-Star and me. But I wasn't especially disappointed, since by this time I was starting to be interested in F-Star. She had excellent taste in clothes and wore a obviously high-end blue silk dress. The jewelry she wore was perfect too. Simple, but the kind that caught your eye. It was then that I noticed she was wearing a wedding ring. She and I talked about the concert. We agreed that the violinist hadn't been at her best. Maybe she wasn't feeling well, or had some pain in her fingers, or maybe she wasn't happy with the hotel room she had been provided. But no doubt something was wrong. You are sure to run across those kind of things when you attend concerts often enough. We moved on to talking about the kinds of music we liked. We agreed that we both liked piano music the best. Of course, we listened to opera, symphonies, and chamber music. But what we liked best was solo piano music. And strangely enough, there was a lot of overlap in our favorite pieces. Neither of us could get too enthusiastic for long about shopping. At least it wasn't what we wanted to hear first thing in the morning. Mozart's piano music was beautiful and charming for sure, but frankly, we had grown tired of it. Bach's The Well-Tempered Clavier was amazing, but a bit too long to really focus on. You had to be in good physical shape to properly appreciate it. Beethoven's piano music sometimes struck us as overly serious, and we believed it had been dissected enough already from every conceivable angle. Brahms' piano music was lovely to listen to on occasion, but exhausting if heard all the time. Not to mention often boring. And with Debussy and Ravel, you had to carefully choose the time and the place you heard them in, or else you couldn't fully appreciate their music. Without a doubt, we decided the pinnacle of the piano repertoire was several Schubert sonatas and the music of Schumann. Of all those, which one would you choose? Let me stop here.